Good morning. Today, the ramifications of war in the Middle East continue to hit farmers, and it's not just fuel and fertiliser.
We sell quite a bit of crop plastic through the year, primarily stretch film, net and twine, and we have seen significant price rises in that market already and some product availability challenges.
We'll have more on that a little later. First, this week we're celebrating the 75th anniversary of the official creation of national parks. They're all renowned for their special landscapes, from mountains to moorland. But Dartmoor in Devon has a wealth of treasures under the ground too, with archaeological remains of international significance. Fiona Clampin has been to meet Andy Crabb and Lee Bray, two of the national park archaeologists, on Throwley Common to understand how modern-day farming can coexist with what survives from the Middle Bronze Age.
Is it this hut circle, Andy? Yeah. Where we are now is we're standing inside what on Ordnance Survey maps and colloquially we call hut circles. What they are the remains of Bronze Age houses, which are circular. We've just walked in through the entrance to it, which is still standing, still has big stones standing on either side, which we call door jambs. This is quite a substantial one. It's made of really large blocks of granite, so a lot of effort to build something like this, and this landscape is scattered with these.
And would this have been covered originally 3,000 years ago?
Yes, originally, if we excavated in here, we would very likely find a ring of post holes in the middle for substantial posts that held up a conical roof. We don't know what they were thatched with, but probably heather or bracken. When they are reconstructed, they are surprisingly roomy and cosy places to be with a fire going in them. Quite surprising, really, because you look at it and you think it's quite a primitive thing, but it's actually not. It works very, very well. And the word hut is a bit derogatory, really. They're houses, they're complicated structures.
We've got to pick our way across these rocks.
Yeah, it's not easy.
Away to our right, slightly downhill, is something that looks more like a kind of intact house, Lee.
Yeah, this one's a very well preserved and very large hut circle, actually. It's at the upper end of what we find on Dartmoor. But if we look into the landscape around it, you can see the remains of all of these sort of boundaries, if you like, these hedge banks or walls. And if you look closely enough at these on a plan, once you've surveyed them, you can start to sort of pull apart how that landscape was organised. You see little groups of these houses, they cluster together, so we're not sure why. Are we looking at the farm of an extended family, or is it some other social division? We just don't know at this point.
Andy, what did you want to show me?
You can see the density of bracken has been much reduced, where the animals have been coming in the winter, see their dung and breaking it down, and in the summer between this reeve going down, it gets trimmed 2 or 3 times a summer. Group about 20 local volunteers, and you can really see the impact of that when you turn around and look uphill. We haven't done this bit yet, and you can see the difference in the density and the coverage.
Yeah.
Because 5 years ago, if we were in this hut circle in high summer, the bracken would have been above our heads, and now they've virtually eradicated it. Bracken is a big problem for archaeology for many different reasons as well, and it's also a problem for livestock with the tick burden. So we are working very closely with the grazing and the farming community to reduce bracken coverage.
That'll do.
With us is Steve Alford, who's a local farmer. Steve, it was your Galloways we passed on the way up here. How do you work with the National Park to sort of manage the grazing, at the same time respecting the archaeology?
So we've been working with Andy with the archaeology on Throwley for 4 or 5 years now, and we try to feed them in different places every day, so we're not making any mess anywhere, erosion. And we're trying now with various groups, we're going into trials with Dartmoor Land Use Management Group, and we're hopeful alongside them that we'll be able to prove that more animals on the commons grazing is going to be for the better, for the good of the moor, not just for the archaeology but for wildlife, bird life and so on.
Andy, 75 years of the existence of the national parks, but what we're looking at here is 3,000 years of human habitation and agriculture. So those 75 years are really a good drop in the ocean, aren't they?
Absolutely. Who knows what changes the landscape will go through in another 3,000 years, let alone 75 years. But it's great to celebrate the 75-year anniversary on Dartmoor. I would say this, I'm a bit biased, but it's the jewel in our crown for Dartmoor compared to some other national parks is our archaeology. Where else do you have 10,000 hectares of Bronze Age landscape you can walk through?
Andy Crabb there, ending that report from Fiona Clampin. We've been talking a lot on the programme about the rising cost of fuel and fertiliser following the war in the Middle East. But next year, a new tax could push up the cost of some fertiliser imports even more. The Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism, or CBAM, will add import tax to products manufactured with less strict emissions regulations than we have in the UK. So, for example, more carbon-friendly fertiliser will not be penalised as much. The tax is coming in next January. So how much could it be and what impact could it have? I asked Joe Gilbertson from the Agricultural Industries Confederation, a membership group made up of agricultural suppliers.
That's something that we're very interested to have further discussions with government about at the moment, because it all depends on the metrics that government set. But if we were to look at Europe as an example, where CBAM is already in operation, the price of a tonne of urea using EU CBAM for a verified footprinted manufacture is probably coming out at around about €35 a tonne at the moment. If we were to transpose that to the UK CBAM process is a lot simpler, so we'd expect it to be slightly cheaper. I would anticipate using similar metrics, it would probably come out at around about £25 a tonne. If we were to use a product based on imported ammonia using carbon capture and storage, which some of our members are looking at, where you sequester 50% of your carbon dioxide, you could halve that figure. So you're probably looking at about £10 to £12 a tonne. And the purpose of this is to make sure that businesses that are operating in the UK at the moment and manufacturing products that are subject to emissions trading scheme costs are not undermined and go out of business as a result because of imports that are being made from other countries not subject to emissions trading scheme costs.
Could the UK be producing more of its own products, which would then reduce the CBAM charge?
That's one of the intentions of government, and the government policy behind this is to encourage a move to greener fertilisers. That's likely to happen initially from the manufactured nitrogen fertilisers by companies selecting lower carbon footprint production facilities or going to facilities that are sequestering their carbon to, as I've just explained, potentially halve their fertiliser footprint. Some companies are even going as far as to say that probably by 2029, they may have been able to reduce their carbon footprint by as much as 90%. The other thing CBAM does is it incentivises or makes products from the circular economy or organic fertilisers more price competitive, because obviously the difference at the moment for some non-mineral fertilisers is the fact that they're slightly more expensive to manufacture because of the varying processing that they need to undergo to remove the water content in particular and dry and pelletize them to make them more easily transportable for farmers to be able to access them more easily.
Joe Gilbertson from the AIC. Well, there's another fossil fuel-based product that farmers will be needing soon, which will be affected by the global crisis: plastic wrapping for silage bales. Tractors are already out cutting grass to make silage, and every year thousands of tonnes of plastic film is used to wrap it up to be used as animal feed throughout the year. Jack Cordery is CEO of Mole Valley Farmers, which is one of the UK's leading agricultural supply businesses. He told me prices are already going up.
We sell quite a bit of crop plastic through the year, primarily stretch film, net and twine. And we have seen significant price rises in that market already and some product availability challenges. As we will remember, last year with a high level of drought across the country and depleted forage stocks, it's absolutely vital that farmers can rebuild those inventories this year. So inevitably, getting access to crop packaging products is going to be key for a successful production of forage this year. What we've seen on the back of the war in Iran is rising fuel costs, the feedstock for polymer production that have risen something in the order of 40%. And that is feeding its way through to stretch pricing, net and twine, slightly less on twine. The forecast at this stage is for stretch pricing to be up by somewhere between 25 and 40%, and on the net, somewhere between 15 and 30%. So absolutely vital, really, the crop plastics are to forage production. We're definitely seeing price rises. We've been quite fortunate insofar as we've been able to build inventory of product, but inevitably that will run out at some stage throughout the season.
Farmers didn't always use plastic, did they? And there are non-plastic alternatives. So why not learn from before we had plastic?
What we have discovered over the years with the advances in the technology is that the ensiling of bales in particular has been hugely advanced through the use of crop plastics. And clearly, in a year like this, if the availability is going to be less, the worry is people will use less on each bale, and that will increase the amount of spoilage that they can get. Now, there's a number of things they can do. They can move to a more premium product, which again will allow people to use slightly less and keep that product from not being spoilt by the atmosphere, which is one area.
Can we make our own plastic wrap instead of importing it?
One of the challenges we have is the production process is clearly the same, whether it's made in Europe or made in the UK. And it is a very high energy intensive process. And the cost of energy in the UK is, as we know, higher than in Europe. So it's really a case of economics. And there is some production in the UK for sure. However, the economics of it state that it is cheaper to make it elsewhere, as in a number of industries within the UK.
Although I can probably hear people shouting at the radio, look, we throw away an awful lot of plastic. Could we not have a system where we use our own plastic waste to make plastic wrapping for silage?
This is what the industry is doing through an association called APE, Agricultural Plastics. And what they are trying to do is to encourage the use of recycled material back into crop packaging and other uses. So one of the things the industry is trying to do is to support that process, backed by multiple players within the industry to try and support that process, because we recognise how important it is to be recycling this product.
What can farmers do? Is there anything they can do now to make sure either they've got enough or find a slightly different way of working?
The only thing farmers can do is to make that purchase, get the product on farm for when the weather breaks, they can get on and silage. This is an inevitability, I'm afraid, at the moment, that prices are going to remain firm for the remainder of this season.
Jack Cordery from Mole Valley Farmers. If you want to comment on anything in the programme, you can always contact us. Our email is farming.today@bbc.co.uk. That's all from us today. I'm Anna Hill. The producer is Sally Challoner. Farming Today is a BBC Audio Bristol production.